the new iPad Air, what's the deal? What's cooking? Good looking. I'll tell you what, it does look pretty good. And that's because it's very similar to that of a previous generation. It's just a new iPad. But there is one thing about this iPad that sets it apart. And do you know what that is? It's the M1 chip. So if you're not familiar with the M1 chip or the M1 series of chips as it's become, well, let me give you a very brief history. So basically, when it comes to processors, you've kind of got two versions. You've got ARM based and x86. So you've got processors made by Qualcomm, you've got the Snapdragon lineup, you've got the A series made by Apple, and those other processors, you've got the Exynos, you've got the Kirin chips. I understand you've got many flavors of ARM chips, alright? And they're going to be the chips found inside, yeah, most tablets and phones. So they're alright, they're good at running Instagram and Minecraft Pocket Edition, sure, they're decent. But then you've got x86, you've got the Intels, you've got the AMDs of the world, right? You've got the i9s, you know, they're all beefy boys that are going to be running your video games and your Photoshops and your Premiere Pros. They're great chips. And Apple have recently started replacing their x86 chips, so they're real beefy chips, with those same processors that are found in their phones. But they're not called the same chips. No, they're called the M1 chips, and basically the idea is that Apple have taken all the engineering and all the R&D from their mobile phone processors, and the iPads of course, and they're putting them into that of the Macs. And you've probably heard of this before. I mean, the first MacBooks that were introduced with the M1 chip came out in 2020, so I'm a little bit late to the party, okay, I understand that, you know. You got the MacBook Air, you got the MacBook Pro, and you've even got the new Mac Mini and the iMac. Fair play, cool stuff, and they're beefy. And last year they put those same processors inside the iPad Pro. And now, the M1 chip is in the iPad Air. So, going back to this iPad Air specifically, what's it all about? What is its target demographic? Well, this is basically 80% of that of an iPad Pro, more specifically the 11-inch variant, but it does have a few things missing. First off, it's got a single camera. Can we just gloss past the camera, because no one uses the iPad camera seriously? Like, you might take the odd video call, some document scanning, you might take the odd photo, maybe even the odd video. I tell you what, I got all this stuff set up, all these lights, I got this camera set up, all the microphone, and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to show my friends. This is what I'm up to this evening. You know, it's like 1 in the morning at this point, but you know, sod it, I'm going to take a photo. And I took a photo and a quick video because this is what I just had to hand. And in that case, it's fine, it's great, but most people have smartphones with triple camera setups anyway. In the case of me, I'm using like actual camera right now to record this. No one cares about the iPad's camera. But I'll tell you what, it doesn't have Face ID. And that's where it starts to feel a bit more budget oriented, because it's got Touch ID. It's got a special power button. I'm sure I'll insert some B-roll somewhere, and essentially, yeah, it's like the old home buttons from like the iPhone 5S, right, back in the day, yeah. So you do feel a bit primitive having to like touch a specific area, but I don't think that's a particular concern. Is that really a particular concern? I don't feel like it is. Equally so, just like the 11-inch iPad Pro, it doesn't feature a mini LED display, it's just your standard traditional LCD. Equally so, it is only 60 Hz, and for some people that might be a real big bummer. Now for me, I don't notice a significant difference between 60 and 120 Hz. I do notice it, don't get me wrong, I can appreciate the difference, but it's something that personally I'm not particularly bothered about. Another thing that I'm not particularly bothered about, I don't think many people are going to miss, the USB-C port on the iPad Pro is Thunderbolt 4. How many people are going to be hooking up their iPad Pro to an eGPU? No one. It doesn't even support them. Point is, Thunderbolt 4 essentially gives you more data, it gives you a high bandwidth. Maybe you can hook up the iPad Pro to multiple 4K displays. This is just a standard USB-C port, you know, USB 3.1 I should think. It's nothing major. I don't think many people are going to miss those faster transfer speeds. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this. 60 Hz to 120, maybe that's a significant difference. Touch ID, not that much of a downgrade. Cameras, not that much of a downgrade. USB-C port, not that much of a downgrade. And the fact of the matter is, this is going to be significantly cheaper than buying out of the iPad Pro. Or is it? Well, the way Apple do it is, this is only the 64GB variant, and for a lot of people 64GB is not enough. For example, on my phone personally, I have used over 300 gigabytes of internal storage, and that's just because I've got so many photos and videos. I'm someone that likes to document like every night out, and every day I do some crazy stuff. It's awesome. And it means I have a lot of memories, and if I was to go ahead and buy an iPad that I would use for, I don't know, let's say photo editing, then yeah, okay, this would be an issue. But for me personally, this thing is basically just for mobile gaming. That's kind of it. Maybe a bit of YouTube. Otherwise, I do most of my mobile editing, if you like, on a Surface Pro 8, so I'm not particularly worried about that. But for when you want more storage, you're going to be maxing out at 256, so still it's fairly limited, and the iPad Pros are available in more storage, so okay, fair enough. And equally so, when this thing does start to creep up in price, it's getting pretty damn close to the iPad Pro. So then people think, okay, well, why would I buy the iPad Air, the previous model, when I can go for the next model up? And then you want to increase the storage again, and it all starts to add up in price. Then you add on a keyboard, you add on the Apple Pencil, you might even throw in a case, and it all starts to get quite expensive. And at the end of the day, that's how pricing ladders work. They are specifically designed. I think Marcus even did a video about this recently, where he talks about how these pricing ladders work, and I just gave you a quick rundown. But yeah, at the end of the day, for most people, this is going to be the perfect iPad. It's larger and it gives you a lot more screen real estate, and it feels a bit more roomy than that of an iPad mini. Equally so, the iPad mini, I believe, has the A15 chip, the same as the iPhone 13s, so it's not going to be quite as powerful as this. Same single core score, but multi-core, this is roughly doubly as powerful according to Geekbench, you know, in theory. But I don't think the iPad Pro is really worth it unless you're like a creative professional, or you really do want those premium features, in which case, fair enough, all power to you. So yeah, that was my opinion on the new iPad Air. It's a pretty boring device. I think ultimately it is very, very similar to our previous generations, but it's a cool Apple product. It's the new iPad, right? It's awesome. So yeah, I guess I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.